The sound the paper made was something no one in that room forgot. It wasn't loud. That was the thing. It wasn't a shout or a crash or anything that announced itself. It was quiet, a slow, deliberate tearing, like something being decided rather than destroyed. 30 students sat at warped wooden tables under fluorescent lights that hummed their usual indifferent hum, and not one of them moved. Not one of them breathed. They watched Mr. Calloway set the two halves of the painting down on the edge of his desk, the way a man sets down a receipt he no longer needs. He looked at the girl standing at the front of the room. "This," he said, "is not the work of someone with a future in this field." Zara didn't move. 14 years old, 5'2" in worn white sneakers, wearing her good sweater, the dark green one, with the small hole near the left cuff she'd sewn shut twice. She stood in front of 30 classmates and a man who had just torn her painting in half, and she did not cry, did not flinch, did not look at the floor. She looked at him. That was the part no one expected. Not the tearing. The looking. "Do you understand what I'm telling you?" Mr. Calloway said. His voice had dropped to something quieter and colder than shouting, which was worse. "Yes, sir," Zara said. She said it the way you say something when you have decided that the person speaking no longer has access to you. Polite, empty, final. The fluorescent light above her flickered once, then held. The room smelled like dried acrylic and floor wax, and 30 teenagers holding their breath. Somewhere near the back, a chair scraped the linoleum, someone shifting, uncomfortable. Nobody spoke. Nobody spoke for a long time, and no one in that room was ready for what came next, because 3 weeks later, Zara would walk across a stage in that same green sweater, in front of those same classmates, in front of a judge who had flown in from across the city. And the painting he would describe to the room, the one that had stopped his entire committee mid-conversation, was the painting Mr. Calloway never knew she had made, the one she wasn't supposed to enter, the one that won. But to understand how a 14-year-old girl with house paint and cardboard got to that stage, we need to go back to where it all began, to a 2-room apartment on the 3rd floor of a building where the elevator had been broken for 2 years, to a shed in a back courtyard lit by a single clip-on lamp, and to a man with taped-together glasses who held his granddaughter's paintings close to his failing eyes every single morning and smiled like he was looking at the sun. That's where the story starts. Not in the art room, not at the competition. In the shed, before dawn, with the smell of turpentine and sawdust and everything she was becoming. Before we get back to this story, tell us where you're watching from. And if stories like this one move you, make sure you're subscribed. This one is going to stay with you. The fun is just beginning. Tell us what city you're from in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. The tension is rising. Who's watching from where? Like and subscribe to the channel. More to come. Tell us in the comments who's from which country, and give us a like and subscribe. The plot thickens. Let's check our geography. Tell us where you are now, give the video a thumbs up, and subscribe. We're just warming up. Tell us where you're watching from, give the video a like, and hit the subscribe button. The climax is near. Share where you're from, like, and be sure to subscribe. Events are unfolding rapidly. Write your city in the chat, give it a like, and subscribe so you don't get lost. The juiciest part is yet to come. Let's get started. Get to know each other. Where are you from? Like and subscribe right now. The suspense is building. Tell us where you're watching this episode from, and reward us with a like and a subscribe. The excitement is running high. Tell us what city you're from now. Give us a big like and subscribe to the channel. The alarm on Zara's phone went off at 5:45 every morning. Not that she needed it. She was usually already awake, already sitting up in the dark, already thinking about color. Specifically, the color she hadn't been able to get right the night before, that particular blue gold where lamplight meets shadow. She'd lain in bed working it out in her head, mixing ratios in her mind the way other kids her age counted sheep. She dressed quietly. Her grandfather slept in the next room, separated by a thin wall and a curtain they'd hung together the year the door hinge broke. She pulled on her jeans, her good green sweater, her white sneakers, the left sole separating slightly at the toe, something she'd been ignoring for 3 weeks. She grabbed her sketchbook from the nightstand and pressed it against her chest like armor. The shed was in the back courtyard, 2 flights down and around the building's corner. It smelled like turpentine and sawdust and the faint ghost of a hardware store. Her grandfather had worked 34 years at the Bethlehem plant before it closed, and the shed still held the shape of a man who knew how to build things. She'd claimed a corner of it 6 years ago with a piece of cardboard and a jar of leftover wall paint, and she had never stopped. She clipped on the lamp. The small circle of light fell across her current piece. An old man's hands, painted in deep blue and warm gold, cradling a lamp in the dark. She'd been working on it for 11 days. She had 47 finished pieces stored in a flat plastic bin under her bed. This one was different. She didn't know why yet. She just knew she wasn't done. She heard the back door creak at 6:20. "You're up early." Her grandfather's voice, rough with sleep, came from the doorway. He was 71 years old and moved like a man who'd spent decades on a factory floor. Careful, deliberate, each step considered. His reading glasses sat on his nose, held together at the left hinge with a strip of electrical tape. "I'm always up early," Zara said. He stepped inside and stood behind her, looking at the painting. He leaned in close, closer than most people would, until his face was nearly level with the cardboard. His eyesight had been failing for 2 years. He never mentioned it. "The hands," he said finally. "You got the knuckles right this time." "I changed the angle. I can tell." He straightened up. "Oatmeal's on." She followed him inside. The kitchen smelled like brown sugar and the particular warmth of a gas stove that had been running long enough to take the chill off a small room. He set a bowl in front of her without ceremony. She ate standing up, sketchbook open on the counter beside her, a pencil tucked behind her ear. "Grandpa," she said, without looking up from the page. Do you think I'm good enough?" He was quiet for a moment. He set down his spoon. "I think that's the wrong question, baby." She looked up at him then. He was already looking at her, steady, certain, the way he always was, and she felt something in her chest settle, just slightly, like a door finding its frame. She picked up her pencil. Outside, the city was just beginning to wake. The flyer appeared on a Tuesday, pinned to the corkboard beside the supply cabinet in the art room. Zara noticed it the moment she walked in, the way she noticed anything new in a space she'd memorized down to its water stains. Citywide Youth Art Competition, open to all enrolled students. Prize, $3,000 and a 6-week summer residency at the Hargrove Institute. Entries due in 3 weeks. She read it twice. Then she sat down at her assigned seat, back corner near the window that didn't close all the way, and read it again from across the room, the words small now, but still visible. $3,000, 6 weeks, a real studio. She pressed her sketchbook flat against the table and made herself look at the warped wood grain instead. Mr. Calloway arrived 4 minutes late, as he always did, carrying his travel mug and the particular air of a man who considered punctuality optional for himself and mandatory for everyone else. He was somewhere in his 50s, with the careful wardrobe of someone who wanted to be taken seriously. Pressed collar, clean shoes, a lanyard with his faculty ID that he never seemed to take off. He set his mug down, uncapped a marker, began writing the day's assignment on the whiteboard without looking at the class. Zara raised her hand. He didn't turn around. "Questions after the instructions, please." She waited. He finished writing, turned around, scanned the room, and landed on her hand with the mild expression of a man who already knew he wasn't going to like the question. Quote, 16. Quote, 17, she said. Quote, 18. Quote, something shifted in his face. Not anger. Something more administrative than that. He picked up his mug. Quote, 19. Quote, he said. Quote, 20. Quote, 21. Quote, he took a sip, set the mug down. Quote, 22. Quote, the girl beside Zara, Maya, with her paint-stained fingers and the habit of chewing her pencil eraser, glanced over. Just a glance. But Zara felt it. Zara said, Mr. Calloway said. He turned back to the whiteboard. The class opened their sketchbooks. The fluorescent light above Zara's corner flickered once. The window behind her let in a thin ribbon of October air, cold against the back of her neck. She opened her sketchbook, wrote nothing, looked at the blank page. After class, she walked to the corkboard and stood in front of the flyer for a long moment. She read the fine print at the bottom, the part she hadn't seen from across the room. Community organizations may also submit on behalf of eligible students. She read that line 3 times. Then she carefully tore the bottom edge of the flyer, just the address, just the phone number. She folded it once and tucked it into the pocket of her green sweater, against her chest, next to her heart. It happened on an ordinary Thursday. That was the part that stayed with everyone afterward, how ordinary the morning had been. Zara had arrived early, the way she always did, and taken her seat in the back corner. The art room smelled like dried acrylic and someone's microwave lunch from the teacher's lounge down the hall. She'd set her sketchbook on the table and opened it to a new page, and she was working on a study of light, the way it bent around a curved surface, when Mr. Calloway called for the class's attention. Quote, 28, quote, he said, setting his travel mug on the desk. Quote, 29, quote, students moved, chairs scraped linoleum. One by one they carried their canvases and boards to the front of the room. Real canvas, stretched and primed, the kind the school supplied to students in good standing with the program. Zara carried hers. It was cardboard, the back of a shipping box, painted with the house paint she'd mixed and remixed in the shed. She'd done something careful with it, something she was quietly proud of. She set it on the display ledge with the others. Mr. Calloway moved down the row. He paused at each piece, offered comments, clipped, professional, occasionally something that resembled encouragement. He stopped in front of a canvas by a boy named Derek, who used his father's oil paints and had a mother on the school arts board. Strong use of negative space, Mr. Calloway said. This is the kind of work that represents the program well. He moved on. He reached Zara's piece. He stopped. He looked at it for a long moment. The room was quiet. The fluorescent light above hummed its steady hum. Quote 32, quote, he said, though his eyes had already found her. Quote 33, quote, Zara said. He picked it up, turned it over, looked at the cardboard backing, at the rough edges, at the house paint she'd layered and blended with a brush made from a kitchen sponge cut into shape. Something moved across his face. Not quite surprise, not quite contempt. Something in between, dressed up as professional assessment. This is not the medium we use in this class, he said. The assignment didn't specify medium, Zara said. The room went very still. He looked at her over the top of the cardboard. Then he set it back on the ledge, and then, slowly, with the deliberate care of someone making a point rather than losing control, He took hold of both sides and tore it down the middle. The sound it made was soft, almost polite. "This," he said, placing both halves on the edge of his desk like a period at the end of a sentence, "is not the work of someone with a future in this field. Someone has to tell you that before you embarrass yourself further." 30 students, fluorescent light, the smell of dried paint and floor wax. Zara stood at the front of the room and did not move. Her hands were at her sides. Her face was still. In the back row, Maya's pencil snapped in half. Nobody said a word. She made it to the bathroom before her face did what it needed to do. Third stall from the left. She stood with her back against the cold metal door and breathed through her nose, slow and deliberate, the way her grandfather had taught her when things got loud inside. The bathroom smelled like industrial soap and wet paper towels. A faucet dripped somewhere. She counted the drips until her hands stopped shaking. 4 minutes. Then she washed her face, looked at herself in the mirror above the sink, the scratched, slightly foggy mirror that made everyone look a little uncertain, and walked back out into the hallway. Maya was waiting by the water fountain. Maya said. She adjusted the strap of her bag. Maya fell into step beside her. She was quiet for a moment, which was unusual for her. Then, quote, 43. Zara stopped walking. She stood in the middle of the hallway while other students moved around her like water around a stone, the noise of passing period washing over her, lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking on linoleum, someone laughing too loudly near the stairwell. Quote, 44. Quote, she said. Quote, 45. Quote. Zara started walking again. Faster now. She pulled the folded piece of paper from her pocket, the bottom edge of the flyer, the address, the phone number, and held it up briefly before tucking it back. Maya looked at her. She pushed through the door to the stairwell, and her voice was steady, quieter than the door's echo. He can't take the entry. That afternoon, Zara took 2 buses across town to the East Side Community Arts Center. It sat between a laundromat and a tax preparation office, its window painted with faded murals of hands holding brushes and musical notes. The bell above the door chimed when she walked in. The woman at the front desk looked up, mid-50s, reading glasses on a beaded chain, the smell of fresh coffee coming from somewhere in the back. I want to submit a piece for the citywide competition, Zara said, through a community entry. The woman, her nameplate read Director Paulette Osei, looked at her carefully. You're not submitting through your school? No, ma'am. A pause. Director Osei set her pen down. There's a processing fee, $25. Zara had known about the fee. $25 was 2 weeks of bus fare. She had $11.40 in her jacket pocket. She had been calculating since the hallway. I don't have it yet, Zara said. But I will. Director Osei studied her for a long moment. Then she pulled out a form and slid it across the counter. Fill this out, she said quietly. We'll figure out the rest. That night, Zara sat at the kitchen table with her grandfather's old wristwatch in her hands. She hadn't meant to find it. She'd been looking for a rubber band in the drawer beside the stove, the shallow drawer where they kept rubber bands and batteries and things without a better home. And there it was, sitting on top of everything else like it had been placed there deliberately. His factory watch, steel case, worn leather band, the small crack across the crystal that had been there since before she was born. He never took it off. She'd never seen it leave his wrist. She set it back carefully and closed the drawer. At dinner, rice and canned tomatoes, the Friday specialty, the kitchen warm with steam, she watched her grandfather eat. His movements were slow and considered. He held his fork close to the plate, the way he did when his eyes were giving him trouble. Grandpa, she said. Where's your watch? He didn't look up. She looked at his bare wrist, the pale band of skin where the watch had lived for decades. She looked at her plate. She said. She didn't say anything else, but her chest felt tight in a way that had nothing to do with the competition or Mr. Calloway or any of it. The next morning, she went back to the community center. Director Osei was already at her desk, a mug of coffee sending up a thin curl of steam, a stack of entry forms beside her elbow. "The fee," Zara said. "I can bring it Monday." Director Osei looked at her over her reading glasses. "It's already handled." Zara went still. "What do you mean?" "An anonymous payment came in yesterday afternoon. Cash. Covered your processing fee and the entry registration." She slid a receipt across the counter. "You're officially entered. Entry number 247 of 340. Zara stared at the receipt. The paper was slightly warm from the printer. She picked it up, set it down, picked it up again. "Who paid it?" "Anonymous," Director Osei said simply. Then, after a pause, "Sometimes people believe in things they can't quite explain yet." Zara folded the receipt, tucked it into her pocket beside her heart, in the same place she'd kept the flyer. She walked out into the morning air, cold, sharp, the smell of rain on hot asphalt, even though the pavement was dry, and stood on the sidewalk for a moment. She thought about the drawer, the watch, the pale band of skin. She knew. She walked home. She went straight to the shed, clipped on the lamp, and stood in front of the painting, the old man's hands, the lamp, the deep blue dark surrounding that small warm gold. She looked at it for a long time. Then she carefully wrapped it in the cleanest cloth she owned, a piece of an old bedsheet, and held it against her chest the whole bus ride back to the community center to drop it off. The painting had 340 competitors from 23 schools across the city. It had been made with house paint on cardboard in a shed lit by a single clip-on lamp. She handed it to Director Osei without a word. 10 days before the announcement, the competition judge came to the school. Zara didn't know he was coming. Nobody told her. She found out the way she found out most things, by being quiet in a hallway where people forgot she was standing. His name was Mr. Aldrin. She saw it on the visitor badge clipped to his jacket lapel as he walked past her toward the art room, carrying a leather portfolio under one arm and moving with the unhurried confidence of someone who had seen a great many things and been surprised by very few of them. He smelled faintly of linseed oil, a working judge then, someone who still painted. She watched him go in. The door swung shut behind him. She had 5 minutes before her next class. She stood by the water fountain and waited. Through the narrow window beside the art room door, she could see Mr. Calloway gesturing at the work mounted on the walls. The school's official submissions, 12 pieces from 12 students, all on proper canvas, all with proper labels. Mr. Aldrin moved slowly down the row. He paused at each piece, nodded occasionally, said something she couldn't hear. Then he stopped, opened his portfolio, pulled out a photograph, printed, letter-sized, and held it up beside one of the canvases, comparing something. He said something to Mr. Calloway. Mr. Calloway's expression shifted. Just slightly. Just enough. He shook his head, said something back. Mr. Aldrin looked at the photograph again, then back at the wall, then wrote something in a small notebook he produced from his jacket pocket. The bell rang. Zara moved. Maya caught up with her at the stairwell. "Did you see him? The judge?" "I saw him. He had a photo of something. My friend in second period said he was asking Calloway about a community entry." Maya grabbed her arm, just briefly. "Zara, I think he was asking about yours." Zara kept walking. Her face was still. Her heart was not. That afternoon, her phone buzzed with a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer. She was on the second bus home, the window cold against her temple, the city sliding past in its usual gray and amber. She answered. "Is this Zara?" A woman's voice, calm, professional. Quote, 83, quote, 84. Zara pressed the phone against her chest, looked out the window. A pigeon landed on a fire escape across the street, ruffled its feathers once, and was still. She put the phone back to her ear. Quote, 85, quote, 86. She thanked the woman, ended the call, sat with the phone in her lap for the rest of the ride. Tomorrow morning, Mr. Calloway would open his email. He would see the finalist list. He would see entry number 247. He would see her name. The bus hissed to a stop. She stood up. She walked home in the dark. The email went out at 7:43 in the morning. Zara knew the exact time because Maya texted her at 7:44. One message, no words, just a screenshot of the finalist list, and at the bottom of it, highlighted in the pale blue of a phone screen in a dark bedroom, entry number 247, Zara May Coleman, East Side Community Arts Center. She sat on the edge of her bed and looked at it until the screen went dark. She could hear her grandfather in the kitchen. The particular sound of him, the slow drag of his slippers on the linoleum, the soft clank of the kettle, the radio turned low to the morning news. Ordinary sounds, the sounds of every morning for as long as she could remember. She got dressed, green sweater, jeans, white sneakers, the left sole still separating at the toe. She stood in front of the small mirror on the back of the bedroom door and looked at herself for a moment, the way you look at something you're trying to memorize. In the kitchen, her grandfather was already at the table. No oatmeal this morning, just tea and a piece of toast he'd cut into 2 careful triangles the way he always did. Quote, 87, quote, he said. Quote, 88, quote. He looked at her over the rim of his mug. His glasses sat on his nose, the electrical tape at the hinge slightly frayed now, the adhesive beginning to yellow. He studied her face the way he studied her paintings, close, patient, reading what was underneath. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 89, underscore, underscore. He said. It wasn't a question. She sat down across from him, put her phone on the table, screen up, and slid it toward him. He picked it up, held it close, read slowly. He set the phone down, picked up his tea, took a sip. Well, he said, he's going to know I entered. Calloway, he probably already knows. Probably. I don't know what he'll do. Her grandfather set his mug down carefully, looked at her with the steady, unhurried certainty of a man who had spent 34 years on a factory floor and learned the difference between things that could hurt you and things that only felt like they could. What are you afraid of? He said. She thought about it honestly. That it won't matter, that he'll find a way to make it not matter. And if he does, then I showed up anyway. He nodded once, slow, like something had been confirmed. You're going today, he said. I have to. Then go. He pushed the toast toward her. Eat first. She ate. The toast was slightly burnt at the edges, the way it always was, and she ate every bite. She washed her plate, picked up her bag, pressed her sketchbook against her chest. At the door, she paused. Her grandfather was still at the table, both hands wrapped around his mug, the morning light coming through the kitchen window and falling across his bare wrist, the pale band where the watch had been. She looked at it. He didn't. Quote, 1:02, she said. Quote, 1:03, he said. Quote, 1:04. She stopped, turned around. He was already looking at her, a quiet certainty in his eyes that left no room for argument. Quote, 105, he said simply. Quote, 106. The gymnasium smelled like floor wax and folding chairs and 300 students who would rather be anywhere else. Zara sat in the fourth row, her sketchbook in her lap, her hands flat on top of it. Around her, her classmates shifted and whispered. On the stage, a banner read Citywide Youth Art Competition, Finalist Presentation. Mr. Aldrin stood at the podium, his leather portfolio on the table beside him. Mr. Calloway sat in the faculty row to the left of the stage, his lanyard straight, his travel mug absent for once, his face arranged into the careful neutrality of a man waiting for something he couldn't stop. Zara didn't look at him. She looked at the back of the room. Her grandfather was there, standing against the wall in his good shirt, the one slightly too large for him now, the collar soft with washing, his glasses on his nose, the electrical tape catching the gymnasium light. He'd found a spot where he could see the stage clearly, and he stood with his hands folded in front of him, patient and still, the way he always was. He caught her eye, gave her one slow nod. She turned back to the stage. Mr. Aldrin adjusted the microphone. This year's competition received 340 entries from 23 schools and community organizations across the city. Our committee reviewed every piece without institutional labels. We saw only the work. He paused. That matters, because what we found surprised us. The room settled. Third place. He read the name. Applause. A boy from the north side walked up, canvas shoes, nervous smile. Second place. More applause. A girl Zara didn't recognize, from a school across town. Mr. Aldrin opened his portfolio, removed a photograph and held it so the stage lights caught it. Quote, 111. He looked up at the room. Quote, 112. The gymnasium went quiet. Quote, 113, he said. Quote, 114. He set the photograph down. Quote, 115. Complete silence. Quote, 116. One clap. Then another. Then the room rose. Zara stood. Her legs were steady. She walked to the stage in her green sweater and her white sneakers, the left sole separating slightly at the toe, and she climbed the 3 steps and shook Mr. Aldrin's hand and stood at the podium while the room was still rising around her. She looked at the back wall. Her grandfather had both hands pressed together in front of his mouth. His eyes were closed. She looked at the faculty row. Mr. Calloway's chair was empty. He had gathered his things quietly at some point between second place and first and left through the side door without a sound. The chair sat there, vacant, certain. It said everything that needed saying. 6 months later, the Hargrove Institute smelled like linseed oil and possibility. Zara stood at a real easel for the first time in her life, tall, wooden, adjustable, the kind that didn't wobble, in a studio with north-facing windows that let in the particular flat, honest light that working painters prize. Real brushes in a ceramic jar beside her. Real canvas, stretched and primed, waiting. She stood in front of it for a long moment before she touched anything. The way you stand in a doorway of a place you've wanted to reach for so long that arriving feels almost too large to step into. She thought about the shed, the clip-on lamp, the smell of turpentine and sawdust. She didn't feel like she'd left that place behind. She felt like she'd carried it here, tucked inside her chest, still warm. She picked up a brush and began. 2 weeks after the ceremony, Mr. Calloway had been quietly removed from the competition committee. A review of his classroom grading records had been opened by the school district, not loudly, not dramatically, just a door swinging open on hinges that had needed oiling for years. Zara heard about it from Maya in a text message with no commentary attached. She read it once and set her phone face down on the shed workbench and went back to painting. Director Osei had framed the receipt, entry number 247, and hung it on the wall of the community center beside a photograph of Zara at the podium. Zara had seen it on her last visit before leaving for the residency. She'd stood in front of it for a moment, then turned to Director Osei. Director Osei smiled over the rim of her coffee mug. __quote _119 _. The watch conversation happened on a Sunday morning, 3 weeks after the ceremony, over rice and canned tomatoes, because it was a Friday tradition they'd moved to Sunday, for reasons neither of them explained. "Grandpa," Zara said, "I know about the watch." He was quiet. He set down his fork. "It was just sitting there," he said. "You were going somewhere. I want to get it back. It's a watch. It's yours." He looked at her across the table, steady, unhurried. The electrical tape on his glasses slightly less frayed now because she'd replaced it the week before, carefully, while he slept. Quote, 127. Quote, he said. Quote, 128. Quote, she bought him the watch back anyway. She left it on the kitchen table one morning before he woke, in a small box with no note. She heard him find it from the next room. He didn't say anything, but when she came out for breakfast, he was wearing it. Now, in the studio, Zara mixed blue and gold on her palette, the same 2 colors she'd been working with for years, the colors of lamplight in a dark room, the colors of everything that mattered. And she thought of something her grandfather had said to her once, years ago in the shed, when she was 8 years old, and had asked him why he kept a light on when he could see fine in the dark. He'd said, "The light isn't for seeing, baby. The light is for knowing someone's home." She finally understood what he meant. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe for more stories about ordinary people who refuse to stay invisible. And tell us in the comments, what is the painting you've been afraid to